comes easy to people. It doesn't, especially if you want something long term.
I have the best advice for women in business. Get your f***ing ass up and work. It seems like nobody wants to work these days. You have to surround yourself with people that want to work. Have a good work environment where everyone loves what they do because you have one life. No toxic work environments, and show up and do the work.
First of all, Miss Kardashian, what do you do for work? The phrase, "no one wants to work anymore," gets thrown around every few years whenever people get fed up with working conditions. But it has come back with a vengeance ever since COVID more or less ended. The Protestant work ethic turned American pipe dream has created a nation of workaholics, a nation where people wear 60-hour work weeks as a badge of honor, and their constant exhaustion is par for course to make it in life.
40 hours is a hobby. That's not even a job, that's a hobby.
A nation where anyone demanding minimum labor rights is brushed off as a lazy communist.
Mr. President, I'm beginning to smell a big fat commie rat.
This nation is so anti-labor that the so-called left-wing news outlets are even condemning recent strikes.
Do you believe a strike is worth it if it cripples the U.S. economy and costs up to $2 billion a day?
The concept of no one wanting to work anymore is also especially thrown onto younger generations, continuing this trend of blaming millennials for everything. You know, the generation that has lived through 3 economic crashes in their lifetime. I hate to frame it as a generational thing, but this merit has some truth.
Yes, growing up is a problem.
But if we are to get to the bottom of the issue and ignore the work ethic claims and generational divide, we have to put ourselves into the workers' shoes and ask them why they don't want to work anymore. And I can think of some reasons why. It's not that no one wants to work, no one wants to be paid terrible wages. And it's not just that wages haven't kept up with inflation, they haven't risen since the 70s! That's what happens when all the money keeps going to the top! It's management. In other news, the water is wet. Let's do some math, shall we? In 2018, Apple's quarterly revenue grew to $61 billion, and it generated about $14 billion in profit. But what's Apple doing with this money? They're taking it back to the shareholders. The company distributed $210 billion to shareholders through stock buybacks and increased dividends. If you own Apple stock, you'll see a good return. If you're an Apple employee, you didn't get shit. By the way, Apple only pays a 14.5% tax rate. Apple has about 80,000 employees, so if the average employee makes $100,000 per year, which is on the higher side, Apple could give them all a 5% raise, and it would only cost the company $400 million per year, which is less than 0.2% of the cash the company is using for stock buybacks. See, wage stagnation and lack of benefits is certainly the biggest factor towards why no one wants to work anymore. But there's a deeper, dare I say, more philosophical reason. You gotta realize, it's not that we don't like productivity. I love feeling productive. Hell, I got up early just to write the script for this video. It's that we don't like things that feel unproductive and make us feel like automatons for a corporate behemoth. Speaking of automatons, let's discuss automation. Automation can be seen everywhere, really. But for an easy example, let's look at farming.
In the 1800s, more than half the nation worked on farms.
Today, it is about 1%. Farming techniques have increased productivity substantially, while basically rendering the farmers themselves as obsolete. That's just farming. We don't even need to get into how automation has affected the car manufacturing industry. We don't even need to get into the terrifying reality that is AI art. So many jobs are automated now, or in the process of being automated. Hell, a lot of jobs that many spent 4 years to get a degree for will be done by computers in the future. With the birth of capitalism, people went from working in farms to factories, but automation has done away with both. So what happened afterwards? Did we reduce working hours and allow more leisure time and pursue our passions? Of course not. What happened instead was the creation of jobs that do nothing, because professional, managerial, clerical, and service workers tripled, growing from 1/4 to 3/4 of total employment. I'm talking telemarketers, corporate law, academic and health administration, human resources, and public relations. Not to mention all the administrators that are needed to enforce these roles. It's what anthropologist David Graeber called bullshit jobs.
You know what drives me crazy? What? There's all these people talking about how great technology is and how it saves all this time. But what good is saved time if nobody uses it? If it just turns into more busy work?
Yeah.
Right?
I had noticed over the years that you keep meeting people who are embarrassed by what they do. You meet them at a party and then you say, well, what do you do? And well, I told you the truth. I mean, I got this job. I'm the senior East Coast vision manager for this company, and I don't really do anything. I just file reports and nobody really reads them. And we create these committees and pass things back and forth. And then I thought about it and I thought, this is really interesting because this is exactly what capitalism isn't supposed to do. Back in the Soviet Union, they did stuff like that. They made up all these jobs because they had a full employment program. So how on earth do you have a situation where private firms are making up jobs where they pay people not to do anything? That's exactly the last thing you'd think that a competitive firm would do.
Think about how many hours in your workday you spend actually working. Now think about how many other hours you spend chatting with coworkers, checking social media, or watching this show. There's no way you spend all 8 hours working. As a matter of fact, many countries have realized this and have begun testing out a 4-day work week, and they've had great results. And these results can be seen in full effect with our neighbors across the pond.
Now, the world's biggest trial of a 4-day working week has ended in success, with the performance of companies largely unharmed and workers feeling healthier and happier.
They get 100% of their pay, but do 80% of the hours.
We've seen our happiness go up, and we've seen our fatigue come down.
62% of workers who participated say it provided them with a better social life, and 71% felt it lowered burnout.
We then found in turn, not only were we more productive, our revenues went up. We performed 47% than the same 6 months in the previous year, better financially. We achieved a better work-life balance for all our employees, everyone was happier, and it really is that effect of if you have happy people, they then work harder, they're a lot more efficient, and in turn comes the business performance.
We can prove that our team are happier, less tired, and are making more money.
So if we have proof that we can successfully work less and be just as, if not more productive, then why work all those hours, especially if the job is unfulfilling? So that's the real reason why no one wants to work anymore. Pay isn't great, the jobs are being automated, and the jobs that are left feel pointless. Not to mention the time spent working on them feels pointless, especially when we know we can do more with less time. The thing is though, these issues have been boiling up for a while. We're only now seeing the pot overflow. I mean, these issues have been a problem since the 70s. Don't believe me? Here's Bill Moyers discussing possible solutions in 1976.
But in some places, there is innovation with what is sometimes called job enrichment, or self-management, or humanization. In Europe, which we visited for this report, they seem to be further along. The emphasis is on worker participation and industrial democracy, but the essence of it is all the same. People must win greater control over their working lives.
Hopefully by now you're watching this and thinking,
makes sense.
But what do we do about it besides ranting on an overproduced video? Well, for one, fucking pay us more. Raise wages not through inflation, but through the company's profits, which is what you're supposed to do. When workers have more money, they spend it and stimulate the economy. When businessmen have more money, they just end up hoarding it. Speaking of that, tax the bastards. End the loopholes, the trickle-down propaganda, and neoliberal bullshit.
Ronald Reagan was the devil.
No wonder HW called it
a voodoo economic policy.
It put a curse on all of us.
Well, what I said back then, it's very hard to find actually, let me start over. One, I didn't say it.
Then he fell under the spell, but anyway. Taxing the shit out of the rich is what led to the greatest economy in American history. The highest marginal tax rate in 1950 was 84.36%. In 1960, it was 91%. You know what else contributed to the strongest economy? Unions. Y'all need to unionize. We need to put power back in the hands of the workers. When people have more of a say in the work they do, they're more inclined to want to work. We must strengthen collective bargaining. A 4-day work week is another obvious one. I mean, with a 3-day weekend, you'd get a day for chores, a day for getting lit, and a day to recover. Or, 3 days to get your life together. Families could spend more time together. So that's why pro-labor attitudes are growing in the US. People are realizing their worth. So when you have shitty pay, or your job is automated, or your job feels pointless and unfulfilling, then yeah, I wouldn't want to work either.
Sorry, if you only want to work 4 hours, it's going to be harder for you to get a house.
Oh, and don't mention 4 days.
I feel for everybody that feels this, but I'm sorry. We busted our behinds. We had to bust our behinds because we didn't have the option of going back.
Y'all gave us the housing crisis, though, but...
I do wonder though. See, next time someone says no one wants to work anymore, ask them.
The whole 8 hours of work, 8 hours of sleep, and 8 hours of consumption is propaganda from the platonic ideal of capitalists, Henry Ford. There ain't 24 hours in a day. What the hell is night? There are 12 hours in a day max, and you spend 2/3 of it at a place you don't want to be. Don't you see? Your time is being ripped from your grasp. Will you reclaim the moments massacred by the mundane? Human history echoes tales of toil, where poverty and grueling manual labor were the fact of life for most of the population. Then, in a blink of an eye, the Industrial Revolution changed all of that. Progress and productivity soared, poverty plummeted, and the shackles of labor began to crumble. Through blood and protests, the workday went from 12 to 10, and then 8 hours. With that transformation, a new era emerged. But what if we dared to rewrite history once more? Picture a world where 8 falls just to 4. With those precious hours reclaimed, could forgotten dreams ignite once again? Would we care for one another and step into entrepreneurship and charity? Could we explore our inner worlds, discovering profound truths within the depths of our consciousness? Or could we dare journey to go beyond to the outer world? With each tick of the clock, you stand at the crossroads of contemplation. As the seconds waltz, ponder the symphony of life you yearn to compose.
This is your life, and it's ending 1 minute at a time.
What am I doing with my life? I'm alive! I'm alive! Free yourselves!
Because, my beloved viewers, we are more than just our productivity.
We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams.